Hi, welcome to PDQ Live. Today we're going to talk about getting out of the GUI in 365, using PowerShell to do more things faster, better, and maybe even automating some of those things.
I love it. Get out of the GUI.
Why not?
Yeah, it's so much faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a GUI girl. But
Sure.
we're gonna do some things.
And we have a special guest here
Andrew Plaw.
who's going to walk us through it. Super excited.
Yes.
He knows a couple things
Love
about
what you mentioned.
PowerShell.
He,
Right.
he
And
knows a few
automating things. Yeah.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Okay, so Andrew,
And
should
what
we
we're hoping to do today is wet their whistle with how to start interacting and start automating processes. What are you doing in 365 and Azure, and what do you need to query? How do you connect? And then sort of give you the building blocks so then maybe in future you can really automate your solutions, bring some better reporting to your bosses, and just make your job easier. Because that's really what I personally care about is laziness. But
Laziness is my favorite.
I already like that we're going to have some fighting in the chat. So command line is superior.
Yeah.
We're going to have, I like this. This is my favorite. Let's get it going. Let's have a war
And
in the comments.
So we already have a webcast about using some of like the Graph API.
Yes.
You can go reference that.
Yes.
Previously. This one's like maybe an interactive login to do some of this stuff, and then
Yes.
we'll continue to build on this in the future.
Yeah. And we're, like I said in the pre-show, we're going to have a companion blog coming forth. Well, as soon as we write it, that will be really helpful to have a lot of these commands that these scripts that Andrew has written. And so look for that coming soon. But Andrew, where are we going to start? Are we going to start with these modules?
yeah, let's start with getting set up.
Okay.
Because that is sort of the first thing you need to do. If you're going to start using PowerShell, you're going to want to have the modules available. And there's quite a few we kind of need. So I think Josh has a bunch of cool PowerShell scripts with some different commands in them.
I do.
We want to show that.
Yeah.
But, there's a bunch of modules you can install. We have a bunch listed here: Exchange Online, SharePoint, MS Online,
Teams, Azure,
AZ,
for apps.
Microsoft Graph. Yeah, a bunch of modules. But depending on what you do, you're not going to need everything. This is just sort of some examples to get started. Depends on what your role is and what you're actually trying to do. But once you get those set up, that'll be pretty nice. You want to keep those up to date every so often as well.
Yeah, and we're not going to run this today because we'll just sit here and watch the terminal for a good 10 minutes. I don't think anybody wants that.
Okay, but I have a question actually, though. How do I know what module I need?
It's a great question.
I guess, yeah, it's sort of you look at the name and what are you interacting with in 365. If you're interacting with Azure specifically, maybe AZ is the module you'll need. If you're Exchange Online Management, just sort of tie up the names.
Okay.
Cool.
And with most things PowerShell, there's a ton of resources online. If you're looking to do a specific task, there's usually some code that you can use to get started, which is helpful a lot of times, but you need all these other blocks around it. We're going to cover some important information a little bit later on how to actually interact with different things, but there's a ton of commands. We obviously can't cover them all, but we're going to cover a selection here and give you some sort of ideas to base your thinking on.
Okay. So just full disclosure, we've already run the modules.
Yeah, we've
You'll
got these
need to
ones
do that.
installed.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
We've already done it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right. We're going to move down, Andrew. There's some things to keep in mind as we move on here.
Yeah. So
Okay.
things to keep in mind. Once you get connected, I think we'll probably need to connect to Exchange Online. But when you're dealing with these objects that we get, and you can go ahead and run that while I talk about this.
Yeah.
But a lot of these objects that we're getting are huge, a ton of properties. And the properties that you see aren't always helpful when you just run the command interactively. So one thing that you need to start getting a grasp of in PowerShell is that you're dealing with objects. And objects have a lot of properties in them. And there's a very helpful command we'll look at called select object, which is a great way to look at all the properties or specific properties. But I think for most of our commands, when we're just getting started, we're going to want to look at a bunch of properties and see what's helpful to us. Identify, maybe we're looking for the primary SMTP address. You need to look at the full object to see where that is. Now, another common command that people use to show a bunch of stuff is format table. Format table and then put a star in there. Grab all the properties, show them as a table. And that's pretty good. But it can lead to issues because you don't have a PowerShell object after running. I mean, you don't have a, like whatever object you originally had. You have a formatting object, which makes it look pretty. But if we're trying to automate things, we need to be dealing with the actual object that has properties on it. So If you run that top one,
Sure.
get mailbox result size unlimited, that's going to grab all of our mailboxes in our test environment, which is super tiny.
Super
We
tiny.
have like 20 mailboxes.
Yeah, but that's a ton
format
of
lister, you got a
properties.
ton of properties.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is too much to scroll through all the time.
Oh yeah, look at all this, because we have custom attributes in here, because these are coming from Azure AD Entra ID as well, right?
Yeah. So if you run line 5, that's an example where we use select object. So say we're running this interactively and we'd want to look at all the properties, we could use select object star, grab all the properties. But if we also then automate and put that into a variable so we can use it later, we are able to access a property in it. And then line 6, I use the example of object state. And that will just return that one property. So maybe there's another command down the road where we need to get a particular property from a variable. That's how you do it. Now, if you go to line 9 and you run that with format table or format list, table would do the same thing. But if you do it with that, you'll see object state isn't there. And this is a hurdle and kind of trap that I see a lot of people fall into when they are trying to, look at doing more automation and more things in PowerShell. They won't know why there's no object there. So yeah, if you run mailbox.objectState again, you'll see there is nothing there.
Oh, tab.
Tab is your friend. Tab is your friend.
I tried. It doesn't want to do it.
Dang it.
You see, and that can be really confusing because you'll be like, wait, what isn't it run there? I saw it earlier whenever I ran the command. Just something you really want to look out for. I recommend using select object star whenever you're doing this PowerShell stuff.
Gotcha.
I think I might have some more tips in there if you scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
No.
Yeah, make sure to disconnect your sessions.
Yeah.
Main issue you can run into with that is if you connect too many times and you run out of sessions and you're like, oh crap, I gotta wait now.
Yeah, and this is like an interactive session. Like this is the token type we're working with here. Like you'll notice, like I ran Connect Exchange Online. It threw me to a browser, and then it was like the regular GUI interactive logon, and I get that token back to this.
I definitely
session.
didn't have my phone off and forget to authenticate, so that didn't happen. Nobody saw that.
It worked great. It worked out great. So there's different authentication types here, and you can have sessions for each, right? So yeah, it's good to kind of disconnect those sessions. Since we're already connected to Exchange Online, like we'll stay here because we're talking about it here in this first part. But then there's some other really kind of cool stuff that you can do with the Exchange Online module.
What else should we do?
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. What should we do, Andrew?
I'd say get started with returning all the results. And I'll show you a cool way when dealing with a ton of data, a good way to sort of start visualizing it. Because we mentioned there's a lot of properties that might be helpful. We might not know the names of all of them, especially early in the beginning. Okay, so it gives you a bunch of results.
Yeah.
We didn't select object star. There's a couple properties, right? There's a few properties there. Let's pipe that. So we use the pipe command in PowerShell to connect commands together.
Yep.
And let's pipe it to a command called out-grid view.
So
I'm
that
the
just
worst.
showed me all of my mailboxes. So if I want to see who has a ginormous mailbox, if I'm, for whatever reason, wanting to clean it up, I can look at it that way.
But yeah, I like Outgrid View. Like, because I sometimes when I see data, I want to like manipulate it or like look at it a little differently.
Yeah, I like that.
And filter as well. Like at the top, you can kind of type whatever you're filtering for. You can, do it alphabetically by clicking the column headers.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very helpful way when dealing with large data sets because let's be honest, the terminal is really good, but it's really hard to just scroll through lines of text. It is not easy for my eyes, at least.
I like
Yep.
that.
Love that one.
Yep, I like that one.
Sweet. Yeah, and if you want to get the identity of a particular person, you can provide their identity,
Okay,
Okay.
let's see that one.
whatever unique identifier.
Okay, so we grabbed one for you, Andrew, right here, right, and piped it to select object, all objects for you.
Yep. Every single property is listed there. That's a ton of data.
That's huge, right? So, but this is helpful if you're like you don't know necessarily what you're looking for, but you can go through here and be like, oh, I was looking for litigation hold duration.
Ooh, I like that one. You know why? No, let me tell you a story, actually. I had that happen. So
Okay.
my previous job, the IT manager was super sketch. And he had gone through and put litigation holds on some of the higher ups mailboxes. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Why would you do that? So this actually would have been really handy to be able to see which mailbox it was on rather than go one by one by one.
Oh yeah, that'd be
So
nice.
I actually kind of like that. I want to see that.
Yeah, Josh, for this, while we're here, let's go through an example. Let's pick a couple properties, maybe 2 or 3, and let's modify select objects so we're just returning those 3 properties.
Let's grab the exchange GUID, the litigation hold duration, because why not? And I don't know what else.
Primary SMTP address.
Primary SMTP. Okay. So instead of select object star for you, Andrew, we were going to get select object. What are we going to do? I just forgot.
You said
We'll start with, I think you said exchange GUID, but I see GUID. I know that's a real one.
Okay. GUID. Litigation hold duration. And what was the other one? Primary SMTP?
Yeah.
I think that's one of them. Let's see if we can do this.
Yep. SMTP address.
Oh. Okay.
Bada boom. And obviously you'll need to tweak this for whatever action you're trying to take. There's so many different things you can do, but this is a good way to really limit what's given back to you. So it's a little bit more manageable and specific to whatever task you're trying to report on or get information about.
Absolutely love it. So rather than just getting that giant list, we can just kind of comma delimitate. I want this, 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 and that.
yeah.
Cool.
So like a nice little audit cleanup.
So yeah, we're here doing all kinds of like get commands, right, Andrew? Like where the action we're taking is just returning data. But we can also most of the time just tweak these to set,
Yeah.
right? So like if we wanted to set the litigation hold duration,
Yeah.
we could change this, right?
If you want to set it for everybody, say they just said we need to hold everybody's mail for a year. You could just set it for everyone's mailbox rather than go through one by one.
Yeah, go through the go through the policy. Yeah, you could go do that, or you could just set up and do it all of a sudden at once.
Yeah.
Done.
Yep. So I like that one a lot.
Usually we're given a task, say we have to change something. The first steps that I want to take before I go to actually change things is see what the current state of things is. And oftentimes I'll query whatever it is we're going to change at the end. I'll query it beforehand, export it to a CSV file so I can refer to it. If I mess something up, I can see all the
Smart.
previous values.
Yep.
Then, yeah, it's usually just the difference between a get and a set.
Yeah. And
Or
so
remove if you're going to remove something.
yeah, if you're new to PowerShell, you're new to working with PowerShell in like, because this is obviously a production environment. If someone's going to be doing this, they're doing it on their Microsoft 365 tenant. You're usually safe. I'll preface it with usually to just set, or sorry, excuse me, just get.
Yeah. You're just
stuff.
looking at
You're
about
just
you.
looking
Yeah.
at stuff, and then you can familiarize yourself with it before you go and actually start making changes. Wildcards are kind of scary when you're using set, but sometimes you do, right?
Yep. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to look
Do what you got
at
to do.
that we talked about was delegates. Delegates in my career have just been the bane of my existence. So
Okay.
we wanted to see who has delegate access to whose mailbox. So these can be a little
All right.
sticky.
We're going to clear the screen here for this one. All right, so
So I think it's actually a different script.
which one are we in?
We just saw it on there, Andrew.
Delegate access to calendars or
yeah.
share calendars org wide?
It was on the mailbox one, but you can do the other one.
Oh, sorry.
It was right there.
Oh. Am I blind?
Go down.
For this one here?
It was right there, delegate on Andrew's mailbox.
I'm blind. I'll let you drive.
You can go on the other one.
All right. So we can see like the access to calendars, right? Is that what you're trying to see? Or are you trying to just see where it is?
No, go on.
Okay.
I think it was up, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Continue on.
So let's check out some permissions on calendars. I know that was something that PS Juice in the Discord mentioned was calendar permissions and how do you access that? Because I know we have mailboxes and the calendar is kind of like a folder and there's a little syntax that is needed to get that.
Yes. Okay. So how many times have you wanted to give permissions to a calendar, but not the mailbox?
Oh, all the time.
All the time, right? And
Right.
you need PowerShell to do it.
And maybe you just want to set view access, but not modify. Like there's a couple different ways to do that in here, right?
Yep.
So like, did I just lose it? Here we are. So we can add them right to you. Like we can add the mailbox folder permission. And I think we're going to specify a calendar here, right? So
Yeah.
access rights are like editor.
Yeah. So this one's giving full access rights, but as you said, you can give read access rights. So you're going to specify it here. And for this, we just
Yeah.
want to do the calendar.
Yeah.
not the mailbox.
Yeah, and you can see that in the identity field, right? We put the :/calendar, and that is so we're just dealing with the calendar folder.
Yep. So here we have like default anonymous or is availability only. That's like your freeze busy. But now Andrew on Tara's account is an editor, can go do whatever, but not see your mail.
Yeah.
So like I think the most commonplace time that I see this is for like executive assistants.
Yeah, exactly.
Who are like, I just need to be able to move stuff around on this person's calendar.
Yeah.
Or maybe your organization wants to do something like, I want everyone to be able to see the titles of events that are on my calendar for like bookings.
Yeah. Free busy.
Or even more detailed than that, because some people will block it out as like work time. But if I really need that meeting with you, I don't want the free busy to block it just because you have work time. Like I get it, but I really need to meet with you.
Yeah.
So maybe I just want to see the titles.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can change those there.
So, and I think,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, Josh, I think you actually shared a script with us that we may or may not have used in the past at PDQ, I think number 3, which is a way to share the kind of visibility into calendar events org-wide, and you can specify a list of people that shouldn't have it.
Yes.
Right? So, executives and things like that, which I deleted their names to protect the innocent.
Thank you.
Tara is our fancy executive around here.
Okay. So the one thing I do want to call out about this script is this fun thing. If you've never seen it in PowerShell, this requires is one of my favorite things, especially when you're working with these different areas inside of Microsoft 365. Because this is like the script won't even attempt to run unless those modules exist. Like it builds that requirements list for you. So those are a helpful thing, just like a helpful tip here.
Super helpful. You write one line of code right there, and there's actually so much that happens in the background, but all you need to know is just about that. And anyone else in the future who runs your script, you don't need to tell them. If they install the script from like some kind of repository, it'll try and install those as well. So pretty cool stuff.
Yep. All right. So for this, like internally, what we're doing is we get all of the users, right? And we have to like enumerate, because each user now we need to change that mailbox permission for each other. Right? There's not this setting to do it like org wide. So we're going to enumerate the list of every single user. And then for each of those users in this list of users, we're going to change the calendar permissions so they can see each other.
Oh, okay.
Like if you had to go do this manually, and let's say you even have 50 people, you're clicking, I don't even know how many thousands of times through that Exchange Online, like really responsive GUI.
Yeah.
Haha, it's not.
And you're doing
Nice
this
to
for
do
like HR and C-suite people, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we're doing in this variable here, we're setting this no share,
Yes.
right? Because like we've got our for each block, for each user and users, right? And we're going to expand that property for user principal name. But inside of that for each block, there's an if, right? If you are in the no share list, we're going to just like skip. We're going to skip you. We're not going to do this for you, but we're going to do it for everybody else.
Okay. And is that a dynamic group? Is that what it says at the top there? Did you make a dynamic group in Azure?
Yeah, it's just right here.
Okay.
Object goes here.
So it's going to check for that dynamic group first. If it belongs in this dynamic group, take no action, essentially.
Or you can like
Yeah.
specify a list in the variable no share,
Okay.
right? So can we actually run this one?
Well, yes and no. We're on-prem only, so we can't.
And I didn't grab the object ID.
Okay,
I deleted it.
that's okay.
But it's a really cool one.
This is one of my favorites. Yeah, so we build
Yeah.
through, we run through, and we go like, here, we're not in this list. We're going to perform the action. And then notice again, we're disconnecting
Yeah.
from these two things with the confirm. Don't actually ask me to confirm
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. That one will fail, but it's really cool. So we wanted to show it.
Yep. Again, here, the
This
syntax.
brings up a really good point, which is whenever you're going for any kind of automation or doing any kind of task, it is massively helpful if you identify what the policy is or what the expectation of what you're looking for is. So in this example, like you have a policy, your company's like, hey, we want to start sharing everyone's calendars except for these people. You identify that task, and then you can proceed with doing the PowerShell to kind of make it happen. But if you don't have like that knowledge of what you're looking for or what your policies are, it's wicked hard to actually do things outside of just reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other thing I think I want to call out about the script, which we haven't touched on today, is this bit right here. What if? Andrew, do you want to give us the 2-second overview, if I'm brand new to PowerShell, what this does?
Yeah, if a command has what if set up, which most commands do, Some commands have some struggles with it, but what it generally does is whenever you provide it to a command, it won't actually execute or set anything, but it will tell you would have taken action on X object. So it gives you some brief information so you can test the logic of your code without actually executing things.
That's fantastic.
Super helpful.
I think
And
that's
if you're writing tools, yeah. If you're going to be writing tools for your team too, especially as you get better at PowerShell, make sure that the functions you write also support what if.
Awesome.
Changing things is scary.
Yeah.
So give yourself some
especially in
safeguards.
production, especially like that last one, like we went through and we enumerated every list of user in the entire Exchange Online and then made a change against it. So that what if is like oh, okay.
Yeah.
Save my bacon.
I
And
actually,
a lot of times these commands are like just one or two commands to accomplish a really massive task. The challenge is just identifying what command you need to run, how to find the targets you're going to run it on, and then how to report that information both before you make the change and after you make the change. So you can verify and tell your boss confidently, like, hey, I did it.
I just misspoke. We're cloud only, not on-prem only. I just wanted to clarify that. I said it the exact backward. Andrew, didn't we include down there to make free busy only, or just if we want to hide details on people's calendar? I can't remember if we had that on there or not.
Good question. I have no clue.
I think that it's in this access rights.
Oh yeah, the sharing permissions. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
sharing permissions, like these access rights here, you can usually look these docs up on what the parameters are because they don't necessarily make sense and they don't exist until you set them in many cases.
So if you did want to do it org-wide and you just don't, for whatever reason, you just want to say free busy for your entire org, you can set it that way. So
I think
I like that quite a
Yeah,
bit.
I think that's the default out of the box, right? Is just everyone is this default availability only, and then there's non-editor, and then there's I think 2 or 3 more parameters that you can set there that you just won't see until you look at the docs.
Yeah.
Sure. So Andrew, do you want to go to some of these other scripts? Do you want to take some questions? Where do you want to go next?
I think we can get some questions, but I definitely want to cover Microsoft Graph and give people a little bit of a getting started guide on that.
Okay.
All right, let's throw a couple questions in here. Hey, y'all, any good way to query to see what mailboxes a person has access to? The only way I have to do it is get every mailbox and then list out the ones that the user in question can access. Sincerely, Broken.
So that delegate access, that one we did earlier, is he talking about delegate access?
Well, it's the I think you're turning that one on its head.
Okay.
You don't want to see what, I don't want to see who has access to your mailbox. I want to see all of the mailboxes that you have accesses to.
That I'm a delegate of.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that sorry, my mic is all over the
You're throwing
place.
stuff.
That was on that first one, if you go on Exchange Online. Or no, delegate access to calendars. Because we did talk about that. So that's a big issue. That has been a big issue for me in the past. I want to see either who, as an executive assistant, you have delegate access to what mailboxes, or as an end user who I may have delegated access to my calendar. That one right there does it.
So this will do it.
Yeah, that
So-
one right there.
Well, to answer his question, do I know of a good way? No, the way that comes to my mind is you have to get all the mailboxes and then go through each one and check the permissions on it, like he said. And I think we do have some code that goes and grabs all the mailboxes and then uses a for each object to go through them. But yeah, there's no great way. It's going to take some time
So
that I know of. If anyone else in the chat knows of some kind of different command to do that, curious to hear that.
I've got a follow-up question for you, Andrew, here, because I've always wondered this myself. So I see here in lines 8 through 10, we're running for each. What's the difference between for each and for each object on the way that those execute? And do we need to be worried about that in this type of context?
No, not really. I think
Okay.
that if you're dealing with a script for each object, for each loop, like you're looking at here, it's very helpful to go through things, but it does have a lot of similar functions to using the for each object commandlet. The difference is that for each object you use kind of in a pipeline scenario, but you can accomplish a lot of the same things very similarly, but it's easier to read for each, this like we have here on line 8. It's easier to read in a script format.
Okay. Thanks. I remember when I was brand new to PowerShell, I was I see these things used almost interchangeably. I'm I don't know if I'm doing this right.
Yeah. No, it's kind of nice because with that for each user and users, so users is a variable that has a bunch of stuff in it, or maybe just one thing. And each time it goes through a loop, it creates a new user variable that you can do. So it just is a kind of an easy way to iterate and do some kind of command on a bunch of items.
Gotcha. Cool.
I think in document 1, there's an example of using the for each object to get mailbox permissions.
Oh, yeah, I bet there is. Should we go to another question, or do we want to jump into graph? Because we're going to post all this stuff back into the bonus content, right?
Well, it's going to be in the blog.
Or the blog.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll make this into a blog.
So should we go to the graph, or should we take another question?
Go to the graph.
Let's go graph. All right.
Yeah, let's go graph. So graph is huge. We could cover this for a very, very long time. There's a ton of different tasks. It is a massive project. And I think it's part of the Microsoft PowerShell Azure 8 SDK. They got some fancy name, but it's basically the Microsoft Graph module. So, which we installed in the first step. So the first thing you want to know about this is it's based on an API. So there are some kind of little additional things you need to add to your PowerShell knowledge when dealing with this. Sometimes, I know we mentioned set commands earlier. There are different verbs used at times that can be a little bit confusing. And there's this concept of scopes. So scopes is like a principal least privilege kind of thing, right? We want to give the absolute minimum access for whatever we're trying to do, which is nice. But do we know all the scopes? Do we know how to find the scope for a particular command? Do we know what scopes we have currently available? So
All right. Yeah.
once you get connected to Microsoft Graph,
So here
you
we
can
are.
check on that with the MG context.
Yeah, so I connected to graph in line 5 here. So I'm going to clear the screen just to make it easier to see. So then we can see what context we're in, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to try and make this bigger.
So again, so much data.
A lot of
So
it you
much
might
data.
need,
You can
though.
see the
Yeah.
scopes.
Yeah.
So we can see the client ID we're connected to, the tenant ID we're connected to, the scopes. And we can even see, we started talking about that token type, right? So our current token type was that interactive browser. Remember when we had to go
Yep.
log in?
Authenticated.
We can
Yep.
see that here. And we can see the account name as well. That's super helpful in this context. And this is like one of those
definitely is.
troubleshooting tools. Like if you're trying to automate something and you don't know the scopes or the context that you're in,
Yeah.
even like an out, like a readout at a certain point to make sure that you're there could be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've identified there's a ton of different commands. There's a bunch of different scopes. If we're not like Azure experts and that kind of thing, we're not going to know all these off the top of our heads. So how do we find out what scopes we need for a particular command? This is the code you're going to want to do. So first of all, there's this command find-mg graph command, which will return information about different commands. And what we're doing is we're expanding some information about the permissions, which will tell you the role that's needed. So yeah, if you run this command, we use select object a couple times. There's the name of these scopes that you need to use, mail.send. So if we were to reconnect to Microsoft Graph and specify that scope.
So if we specify the mail.send, so if we do connect, oh my goodness, connect-mg graph.
You can put it comma separated or just specify the one you need.
Okay.
This works perfectly fine.
So now we're
Bada
connected,
boom, we're connected.
but only to be able
Simple
to
enough.
send mail in this scope.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a pretty helpful command to run. A lot of times we have PowerShell scripts. They're great for us. But when we can export that information into other sources, or, if you look at things like webhooks, there are easy ways to share context from your PowerShell scripts with your Teams channel, your Slack channels, whatever you have. But if you scroll down, there's a pretty bit of a long example of how to send an email.
Update display name, send email. All right.
Absolutely.
I'm
There you
gonna
go.
try and shrink this here.
Yeah, and I'll be completely honest. This example, so you can expand message. You'll see there's a bunch of different properties on it, like who it's going to, the subject, things like that. Yeah, there you go. Some simple stuff. But this example, how did I find this? I ran help send mg mail or graph mail, whatever it is. I ran that command and I looked at the examples. And this is what you're going to want to do with a bunch of commands, especially this fancy stuff where there's parameters. You might not know what it correlates to. Read the example documentation and look at their examples. Oftentimes they're pretty detailed And a lot of what you're trying to do, and even things that are helpful that you're not trying to do, will be listed, and you can pretty much copy paste and just change a couple parameters and you're good to go.
That's awesome. And these like scopes exist for all things Microsoft 365. I can send like maybe I want to get into SharePoint, maybe I want to get into Teams, maybe I want to send an email.
You want to send a Teams message.
Yeah.
You could do some awesome like bot stuff. I was talking to a guy yesterday who's looking into automating replies and stuff like that using Teams and the Graph API. So really, it's very limitless what you can do.
You guys had me until this. Okay, seriously. Why am I going to copy all of that to send an email when I can just hit one click? Come on.
So what if I, I'll give an example of something I might use this for. Maybe like I get a new hire notification from like some HR system.
Yeah.
Right. And then I want to send an email or I want to create a ticket, like a mail send based off of that.
So part of an automation, but I'm not gonna copy this every time because come on.
You're not going to use this to send a mail that says, hey, it might be fun that the cafeteria is open. Right? That might be fun.
I'm not doing that.
Or maybe you have to send that message every day at noon.
Okay, so if I build it into part of an automation script, okay, I can get behind that, but I'm not copying.
So, and while we're talking about automation, I think Jordan brought up in the chat too, like these scopes really are for principle of least privilege.
Okay, for
like
security.
I am scoping this down that the only thing that can happen in this context is to send mail. I'm not going to use the full all scopes if all I need to do is say the cafeteria's open.
Okay.
Right. So
Fine. Okay, I'll give you that.
it opens up the opportunity to automate a lot of mundane workflows that may already exist in Microsoft 365 for you.
Okay. All right, fine. Fine.
You convinced
You can
her.
have that. Well, what we were trying to do, actually, and I just want to mention this, and Andrew can expand on this, is we were really trying to find things that you can't do in the GUI. And you know what I found? A lot of things you can do now that you couldn't even do a couple of years ago.
But how much more time does it take?
In the GUI?
Yeah.
No more time. But like even 3-4 years ago, you didn't used to be able to change the email address of like a shared mailbox. You can now. So certain things you just simply couldn't do.
Ooh, okay. Let's race. I'll give here. Let's share calendars or guide. I want every user to access every other user's. I'll click go on this script. You go start changing it in the GUI. We'll see who wins.
That you couldn't do. But you know what you could do that Andrew pulled the script for that I think is very nice? You can share a shared mailbox calendar without sharing the
mailbox. Stuff.
That's nice.
You can get
like
hyper
that.
granular here.
Yeah, I do like that. So there are some things for sure.
All right. Andrew, is there anything else you want to show today? Anything else burning?
We do have one question left.
Oh.
I want the question.
Okay.
Let's do the question.
Let's give you the question. I use Terminal to have Command and PowerShell in the same window, but I've used PowerShell ISE for years when writing scripts. Are there better programs out there? Just Rob.
Probably. Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Probably, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah, VS Code, there's a curve there. There's a learning curve, but it is one of those tools where it's going to be around for a long time. It's probably worth investing in. You probably are going to run into some hiccups, probably like you do in the ISE as well, but
Do you want to throw
Yeah.
the ball for your pets? Because you can with VS Code.
VS
I don't
Code
know.
pets.
Maybe
yeah.
maybe I can start a riot before we're done for the day. It's like asking, what's your text editor? Do you use Vim, Nano, Emacs? Like, what do you use? Like, do they all do the same thing? Sure. So,
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, remember, this was just scratching the surface. And again, Jordan did a webcast prior, so go watch that one to get the preview to this one. And then we're going to follow this up and look forward to this wonderful blog that Andrew's going to write,
yeah. Hopefully this is the primer to start getting you out of the GUI.
hopefully. For PDQ, I'm Tara.
Josh?
That's Andrew back there. Hey, thanks for joining our webcast today. If you have additional questions, you know what? Go ahead and reach out. We love your comments. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you back here next time.